Long ago, there lived a wealthy store owner who had two sons. Anthony was the oldest, and John was the youngest. For the last 2 years, Anthony and John had been very anxious to prove their father that they could live on their own successfully. But their father told them to wait and gain more experience from living at home with him. One day the store owner said, "The time has come to see how well you will do in the world. Here are 10 gold coins each. Return in a week and tell me what riches you've made." Both boys took their coins, and they left determined to succeed and make a lot of riches. Anthony went to the fair and spent his money on every enjoyment. He spent and spent until his gold was gone. John went to the green forest. Suddenly he had heard a baby bird chirping sadly. He found the little bird where it had fallen and returned it to its nest. The mother bird flew around him chirping, "Thank you, kind man." "You're welcome, mother bird," said John, "but how am I able to understand you?" "Kindness makes it possible, if just for a moment," answered the bird. "Ask me now for something that a bird might give, because I want to repay you." John paused and thought about what it really meant to be successful. He thought about his father's business and realized that a lot of people had helped his father become a wealthy store owner. Then he said, "I wish I could always understand the language of birds." "Done!" chirped the bird in delight. "Come back each day for 1 week and I'll teach you." When the week had passed, both sons had returned home. "Boys," said the store owner, "tell me what you have gained, for gain is the most important thing." "I went to the fair," said Anthony. "There I spent my gold entertaining the sons of the very wealthy store owners. I made no money, but in the future I will be helped from their friendship." "Excellent!" cried the store owner. "Now you, John." "Here are all 10 coins back, father," said John. "What?" exclaimed the store owner. "But what did you do?" "I went to the forest," said John, "and learned the language of the birds. It cost nothing." "No one can understand the language of the birds," said the store owner. "Tell me, what is this little bird singing outside of our window?" "She sings," says John, "that one day I shall be the prince with 100 horses, each one wearing a coat of silver and gold. You and Anthony will both live in my kingdom." "I don't believe you!" roared the store owner angrily. "To make up such a story, you can spend this night with your friends, the birds." Then Anthony was brought into the house and treated royally, while John was locked out in the cold and dark. But the little birds brought him berries to eat and sang so sweetly to him that he slept without a care. The next morning the store owner said to his sons, "I am sending you to a sea captain I know. Give him this letter, and he will give you work. This will be your first opportunity to be successful on your own. You, Anthony, will receive a good position, and John, well, he'll find something for you to do." The two brothers walked along the road. "Why didn't you make up a believable story like mine," said Anthony, "instead of retelling such a big lie about the birds?" "What?" exclaimed John in surprise. "You didn't spend your money on the store owner's sons?" "Not at all," said Anthony. "I spent it all on myself." "But my story is true," protested John. Anthony just laughed. When they came back to the harbor, the captain read the letter and asked Anthony, "What would you like to do?" Anthony responded, "Besides the captain, who's the most important person aboard?" "The pilot of the boat," explained the captain. "With knowledge of winds, tides, and currents, the pilot guides us safely to our harbor." "I know all about such things," said Anthony. "Wonderful!" exclaimed the captain. "The job is yours. Now, John, what do you think your skills are?" "I'm not sure," said John, "but whatever needs to be done, I'll do my best." "That shows spirit at least," said the captain. "For now, take a mop and swab the decks." Soon the anchor was raised, and the winds filled the white sails, and the ship set out into the blue sea. A band of cranes flew overhead. John listened to their cries. Then he went to Anthony. "The cranes warn of a bad storm. They say no ship should leave the harbor." Anthony said, "Don't be a fool." But soon the sky grew dark. The waves rose hungrily, and the wind began to howl. The sails were torn to shreds before the storm passed on. The ship limped back to the harbor. The captain yelled at Anthony, "You were supposed to warn us of such things." Some sailors who had overheard John's warning told the captain that Anthony had been told about the storm by his younger brother. "What's this?" said the captain, stepping onto the deck. "I hear that we have been warned about the storm." "My little brother is a stupid and a dreamer," laughed Anthony. "He thinks he can understand the language of the birds, and they warned us of danger." "He was right about the storm. You almost killed us," said the captain, bowing before John. "Good man, please be the pilot of our boat. You would be a better pilot." To Anthony he said, "Take a mop from John, and you shall clean the decks." The next day they set out again. This time, with John's help, they sailed past all dangers and arrived safely in the kingdom of King Alexander, a monarch so wealthy that even his horses wore coats of silver and gold. The captain said, "Stay with us, John. You are the best pilot on the 7 seas, and your fortune will be made." John answered, "Thank you, but as I've always loved the green forests, I shall now return to the land to see what success I have gained there." Anthony decided to leave too, rather than stay and scrub the deck. So the brothers collected their pay, said farewell to their shipmates, and set off. In town, they came across this sign reading, "Night and day 3 crows caw at the window of the great King Alexander, keeping him from sleep. The hero who drives him away shall receive half of his kingdom. Those who fail will be put in jail." "Chase 3 crows and win half a kingdom?" exclaimed Anthony. "That's the job for me." "Careful, old brother," said John. "Don't get excited that easy. Failure means we'll be put in jail." But Anthony was already on his way. Soon he stood before the king. "Caw, caw, caw," croaked the crows. "Silence!" thundered the king. "Be patient, father," his daughter Sophia cried. "Maybe this man will help us." "Caw, caw, caw," continued the crows. "Half my kingdom is yours," sighed the king, "if you quiet them." Anthony went back to town and caught cats, hungry, scrawny, skinny cats. He brought them to the palace and set them free. The cats heard, "Caw, caw, caw," and at once leapt into the walls, clambered up by trees, and clawed along the vines, chasing the 3 crows, giving them no rest. At last the exhausted crows flapped their weary wings and flew away. "Clever lad," yawed the king in sleepy delight. "Tomorrow you shall share the riches of my kingdom, but tonight I shall sleep." And he closed his eyes and fell into a deep sleep. Anthony did a little tiptoe dance, delighted of his own cleverness. "Tomorrow I'll be rich," he sang softly. "Tomorrow." But then, caw, caw, caw! Anthony stopped singing and dancing. The sky grew dark. Caw, caw, caw! A huge flock of crows flew overhead. They dove at the cats and drove them away. Then the flock flew off, leaving only the 3 crows again at the king's window. Caw! The king woke up in anger. "Throw him in jail," he roared. In town, John heard a little bird chirping. "Foolish cats, beaten by crows." "My brother's plan has failed," said John. "I must help him." Soon, John stood before the king. "Your Majesty," he said, "I will bring peace." "Caw, caw, caw," cried the crows. John listened carefully and said, "Sir, the largest crow is the king. Beside him is the queen. Next to her stands their son, the prince. They have come to ask a question which confuses them. Whose advice should a child follow, their father's or their mother's?" The king scratched his head and tugged his beard. The 3 crows watched in silence. At last King Alexander sat up on his throne and announced, "Many young soldiers arrive at our court hungry and tired, dirty, rumpled, and torn clothes. It's as if they have never learned a thing a mother might teach. They may know how to swing a sword or hurl a spear, but nothing about how to care for themselves. And why shouldn't a daughter learn from her father how to ride a horse, shoot an arrow, or chop firewood? My answer is this: let sons and daughters learn all they can from both parents. The crows bowed deeply. Then they flapped their shining wings and flew away. It was quiet, so quiet. The king clapped his hands, laughed aloud, and said, "The world is filled with wonders. Who would have thought that in my own kingdom there was a man who understands the language of the birds? Tomorrow I will present you with half my kingdom." "Great king," sighed John, "I would like nothing better than to have those riches, but I must ask for a different reward. Please free my brother, Anthony." "Father," said Princess Sophia, stepping forward, "listen to John. He is good and kind. It would be smart to do him a favor for a man who understands the language of the birds, and who is wise and generous in helping others." "You are right," agreed the king. "Guards, free Anthony." And now, he yawned, "to sleep." John thanked the princess. Anthony, released from prison, did another little dance for the joy of being free. The next day, John was awarded half the kingdom at the great party held by the king. Soon he married the pretty Princess Sophia, and now John was a prince with a stable of 100 horses, each wearing a coat of silver and gold. His father and brother both live in the kingdom. Indeed, everything turned out just as that little bird said it would.